After using the iPhone 12 mini for a few weeks, I can confirm size does matter. So here's the thing. I wrote the script for this video, and I was sitting down to record it, and I realized that it didn't say what I wanted it to. I absolutely loved the iPhone 12 mini. This has been my best experience using iOS to date, and yet my original review sounded so negative, so disappointed with the screen, the bugginess of iOS, the battery life of the phone. If I wanted to buy an iPhone right now, I would buy an iPhone 12 mini, no doubt about it. Despite me being a tech nerd who yearns for the amazing cameras and the high refresh rates of the Pro, I would buy a mini iPhone. And today, I'm going to tell you why. I'll start off with the reason you might be looking at an iPhone 12 mini. The size. The reason that I enjoyed the 12 mini so much, and that so many people do enjoy the 12 mini, is because of the design and in-hand experience. This thing is small. Taking it out of the box, the first thing I noticed was how thin and light it felt. It reminds me of my iPhone 5S, which is now my second favorite iPhone, just without those easily scratched, chamfered edges on the side. Those flat sides lead to a feeling of substantiality, but not feeling like a brick. The feather weight of this device makes it feel dense, like a dense piece of electronics that somehow feels like air. There's no bending, there's no creaking, twisting, flexing, nothing. Personally, I like the flat feel of the edges because they dig into my palm more in a reassuring way. Yeah, the rounded edges of other devices fit more into your hand because your hand is curved. They slide around so much in your hand that they're really easy to drop. And a drop is the worst thing you can do with the move towards as much glass as possible on as many places as possible in our devices because premium. The 12 mini is made with matte aluminum on the edges, which personally I like the look of much more than the stainless steel on the Pro devices, and glossy glass on the back. This gloss does actually make the mini slightly less slick on the back at the expense of picking up more fingerprints at every possible moment, although the stunning blue color does help hide some of those fingerprints. The size for me is the best part of the 12 mini. It's so easy to manipulate in one hand, because if you're out like me, you're constantly having a backpack or a water bottle or something else in your other hand, and so one-handed usage is incredibly important. And the small size combined with the light weight and the flat feel makes using the 12 mini as a phone actually possible. Compared to my 10R, the 10R felt like a legitimate surfboard. The 12 mini slides so easily in and out of my pockets. The buttons have a really sharp click and they're really easily reachable. But I do think that Touch ID would have made a lot more sense on the power button here, even in a non-pandemic world. Just touching the button and having the phone unlock would be a massive time saver, even compared to the quickness that is Face ID, which is still excellent here. As with any new iPhone, the lightning cord had a reassuring tightness to it, although that's definitely going to wear out after a few months, but I was sure that the cord wouldn't get yanked out or just fall out. The one downside of the size was I found myself smudging the camera lens more because of the decreased size. My fingers just naturally went right to where the camera lenses were. And speaking of those camera lenses, let's get into that. Despite how much I care now about camera and video quality, because, I do all this, it still really wasn't at the top of my things I care about list when it came to purchasing a new phone. But I am not the general market because consumers really care about camera quality. In a recent survey completed by the Morning Consult, 86% of respondents said that camera quality was either at or near the top of their list in features they were looking for in a new smartphone. And let me tell you, the 12 mini delivers. I know that the 12 mini is not the best camera on an iPhone. That crown goes to the 13 Pro Max. But coming from an iPhone XR, I'm blown away by the quality here. This was seriously an impressive camera experience. I won't get into pixel peeping because, frankly, what average person does that? This is for my mom and dad who just want to take good pictures. They don't care. What I can tell you is the 12 mini takes amazing pictures and amazing videos. Colors are bright, detail is present in abundance, unlike digital noise in low light, which is blissfully absent. For such a small physical sensor, there is an impressive depth of field, and dynamic range is handled with absolute aplomb. I love taking pictures with the 12 mini, and it inspired me to take more of them because of the absolute quality that I was getting out of this camera. The ultra-wide does deserve some love here, because the ability to just fit more into an image from the same distance, or the same amount in a smaller distance, can't be overstated. There are so many shots that I got that would not have looked the same if I didn't use the ultra-wide camera. I also barely noticed the difference in quality between the main and ultra-wide lens as well. As always, video quality was outstanding. Stabilization makes the video look stable, but not stabilized, which is an important difference. It didn't have that gimbal look. Video looked so natural and clean with great depth of field, good options for high frame rates, and in lower light, there's definitely more noise and colors do start to skew warmer, but very rarely did I take a picture or video and feel disappointed with the results. Even more impressive to me out of all of this was night mode. This was actually my first experience using night mode on any phone, and it blew my mind how good this was. Night mode works by keeping the camera sensor open for longer, which allows more light into the sensor to get a brighter and more detailed image. You do have to be careful to hold the device physically still while you're doing it, because if you move, you'll get motion blur. But I don't know what Apple's done, because I never really got motion blur on it, and I don't have the steadiest of hands. It's quite impressive, because in the viewfinder, you actually can see the image lighten up when night mode turns on, giving you a preview of what your image will look like. This feature heavily relies on the processing power of the A14 chip, and it's really, really good. In the viewfinder, however, there does seem to be just a little bit of lag when night mode is activated, especially on the ultra-wide camera, but that lag did go away when you turn off night mode. On that note, I found the animation for switching between the camera, the ultra-wide, and the regular lens to be kind of laggy, with a noticeable jump in between them. Not even Apple has been able to kind of work that kink out. But really, that is the worst that I can say about this camera. It truly is an amazing experience, and I loved every moment of it. I loved taking pictures, I loved taking videos, and I loved finding moments to do with it. I do wish the native app had more pro features, but for a general consumer experience, they don't need more than this. This works perfectly for them. Now, I started this video by saying that the 12 mini was kind of a contradiction to me. The 12 mini has a very good screen, very good. Colors are punchy, they're accurate, text is incredibly sharp and crisp, contrast is contrasty, and there's enough brightness for most situations. It's just, I don't know, somehow I felt let down by this screen. I remember looking at the iPhone X for the first time, and like it just looked so good. It looked so bright, it looked so saturated, it just had that OLED look to it. And the 12 mini just doesn't give me that feeling. I think Apple wants to maintain consistency with their other screens, so they don't go as punchy as Samsung displays can. Brightness isn't as good as other models, and every now and then I did find myself wishing for a little more brightness, especially outdoors. This was with adaptive brightness turned on, held up literally into the sun, and it still just didn't get bright enough. Dark mode would be great, and it lets the screen blend in with the even thinner display bezels. It's just, Apple doesn't let dark mode be dark. There are a few places where dark mode means pure black, but for the most part, you just get weird, dull gray that feels very lifeless because of all the translucency throughout iOS. Now, on a good note, ignoring the smaller size, watching HDR content was insane. With the infinite contrast ratio and the bright spots across the screen, it looked flawless. I wish that Apple let iOS do more HDR to show off what their displays truly could do. Additionally, every generation of iPhone that I've used, the screen has gotten warmer. I kid you not, every iPhone that I've gone from the 4S to the 5S to the 6S to the XR to the 12 mini, has gotten warmer. The other thing that I was concerned about was pulse width modulation, which is the method that is used to modulate brightness on these screens, especially OLED displays. Some people have found that they can give them headaches, and I personally never had an issue, which was good for me because I don't like getting headaches. Overall, coming from the iPhone XR screen, I did notice the increased sharpness, the contrast was much better, blacks were deeper, and saturation was sharper. The slimmer display bezels made everything feel more immersive, and I never really had a problem with the screen size. Typing one-handed was excellent. It was really a big draw for me. I could use every part of the screen without worrying about dropping this device. Plus, the glass on the front is completely flat. There's no curves at the edges, which will mean screen protectors go on better, and there is some durability benefits. This was a great screen. You're not going to have a bad time looking at this. This isn't some cheap, crummy screen from years ago. It is a great and high quality screen. It's just not quite as good as I wanted it to be. I'll keep this section on battery life similar to the actual battery life of the phone, which is to say, it's not the best. This isn't a weekend phone like the 13 Pro Max would be. Of course, if long battery life was what you were looking for, you wouldn't be looking at the mini line. I think battery is perfectly serviceable. As with any iPhone, the name of the game here is consistency. It is pretty great consistent idle battery drain, which is very little, and consistent usage battery drain, which is more. But I knew pretty much when this phone would die on me, and what I needed to do to conserve battery, which really is all that I can ask for. The battery now reminds me of my iPhone XR, after the battery has been degraded for 2 years of heavy usage. I can get about 4 hours of screen on time, which for a certain demographic, looking at this device, more than good enough. If you want a small phone to make phone calls, send texts, scroll through Instagram every now and then, the battery life will not be a problem for you. If your phone is your life though, you'll want to look somewhere else. At least it charges quickly and it charges coolly. But here is the first of the I love the iPhone 12 mini despite this feature, not because of it. And the main thing here is iOS. Once again, I'll preface this by saying the software isn't bad, it's just not great. Most of the times, iOS works very well and the user interface is smooth, things are quick, and it feels like that bead-blasted aluminum finish has worked its way into the digital iOS universe. But then the poor optimization shows up. Animations will become jittery, notifications run into each other if they even alert you at all, apps are ejected from RAM, the keyboard doesn't show up, Wi-Fi randomly disconnects and can't connect without a reboot, the search refuses to respond, or any of the other, many bugs plaguing iOS. I know it's impossible to catch every bug, but the optimization issues in iOS has been going on for years and years at this point. I don't understand how the UI can drop so consistently below 60 frames per second with as powerful processing power is here. This chip was good enough to form the basis of not just the M1 chip, but the M1 Pro and the M1 Max. Frame drops occur when loading, switching, and closing apps, and yet they're unreproducible. Swiping up to access the music list, very laggy. Dragging down Control Center, same thing. Yet most of the market in the US, Apple has a stranglehold on, and people just don't notice. And despite the smoothness offered on other devices, Apple retains the smartphone crown in the US, which, in my view, has led to them not needing to compete as much, because people just keep buying their product. Overall, I think iOS has grown stale and uncompetitive. And I don't just mean that in it's their 15th version of the OS, of course they're running out of things to do. Don't throw features at us for the sake of adding features. Over time, iOS has grown in the things that it can do. But a lot of these features just feel bolted onto the software, not integrated into it. But because of the lack of competition that Apple has, they don't have an incentive to do better, to truly improve the experience, because people just keep buying iPhones. You could listen to my video discussing the improvements to iOS 15. Mainly what Apple has done here with the iPhone 12 mini is try and deliver a consistent iOS experience. If you've used an iPhone in the past, you know how to use an iPhone now. You know how to use the 12 mini. The iPhone is kind of the distillation of what a modern day candy bar smartphone is. Everything is presented in an easy to find and use mode, unless it's settings, which are all buried in the settings app for everything, which is terrible, horrible. Even if it isn't the fastest way to do something, Apple has attempted to make using the iPhone simple for everyone. But the problem is they're trying to reach the power user market as well, which makes everything feel clunky and outdated. I truly believe that a redesign is in order to clear up not just the older look of iOS, but the clunky user paradigms. Some pieces of iOS do make more sense on the 12 mini. Gesture navigation is easier everywhere with a smaller screen. The non-interactable widgets make sense on a smaller screen. The swipe for the back button is very easy, and app controls at the top aren't insane to access anymore. But overall, Apple needs to devote much more time to UI control, quality, animation, whether it's UI animations or just a general UI experience. Just because they have the crown doesn't mean they need to stop working. I feel like I need to reiterate this. I loved the 12 mini. Even after 2 weeks, every time I picked up the phone, it felt like the first time I took it from the box, and it had that shiny new phone feel. Every single time, and I was long past the honeymoon phase. The way it felt so naturally like a phone, it made the 12 mini fit into my pocket, my hand, and my digital life. Besides my gripes with the battery, which isn't great for sure, as well as the low amount of storage, 64 gigabytes is robbery at this point, and iOS, which really does need work. The 12 mini is a great device, especially when you consider a trade-in too, but sadly, I'm no longer using the 12 mini. I returned it right before my return window expired, because for me, I really wanted to move away from the limitations of iOS. But overall, if you are in the iOS ecosystem and you want a legitimately small phone that'll take great pictures of your kids, runs every kind of application you could ever need, the 12 mini handles that like a champ. For me, the 12 mini has been the best iOS experience I have ever had, beating out even my iPhone 5S, which really I adored. The 12 mini is a phone of contradictions, but because of the size and in-hand feel, it still created one of my favorite smartphone experiences to date. In this case, size really does matter. Thank you all so much for watching this. I hope it gave you some clarity as well as helps you out with the decision purchase. I'm Michael with TechMB, and I'll see you later.